Welcome. My name is Barbara Markham. I'm the Director of Senior Resources for the City of Westland. With me is Jim Crail, who is Michigan Senior Placement. And this is interesting because this is kind of an entrepreneurial thing that started because of your own experience. So
Correct.
Tell us what led you to this area.
Well, this is a journey that started for me 6-7 years ago when my family found the need to search out some place for my father to go. My father had dementia, Alzheimer's, and he was living on the west side of the state, which made it difficult for family that lived here to deal with
him.
it.
Yeah.
Right. There was great support from my mother and my sister who lives in that area, but there comes a time when he just couldn't be at home. His personality had changed, he'd gotten a little aggressive, and we wanted to keep him home as long as possible, but when that time came, we had to move on.
Sometimes there's not a choice.
It's not a choice. So we searched out some facilities. The one that we really wanted, which was close to my sister, which was just top rated by the state, that had wonderful care workers, they were full. Naturally, when you have something that is that good, that's typically the case, right? So we searched out to find something that was a little bit more local and close to my mother, because she was visiting, wanted to be with my father as much as possible, and basically she lived at the facility too, and they would allow her to stay there. So we found a facility that was somewhat close and convenient for her, and I think looking back on it now, it really turns out that it wasn't the best place for my father. It was just convenient, and it was a need and something we had to do. And I'm convinced at this point that it probably, by putting him in the place that we did, probably shortened his life to some degree. The care he received was not the best. The medications that they had him on were constantly being mixed up. I don't think he was really receiving the assistance and care that he should have. They were basically medicating him to keep him down. There came a time in a very short order that they decided that either, I don't know if his Medicare benefits it comes to a point, I think after 20 days, where it's covered completely, and then there's a copay that takes place after that. But I think they came to a point at the facility where it became more of a business decision, and my father had become a little bit aggressive, so they, unbeknownst to the family, they shipped him off to a facility in Indiana. And a couple days later, he passed away. So it wasn't a good experience. And it's my hope to help other families avoid the process and the learning curve that I had to go through, which wasn't very pleasant.
I'm surprised that's legal for them to not notify the family and to move him somewhere.
Well, I'm sure they gave us notice. It's part of that is somewhat of a fog, but this is what we're doing.
This was the outcome.
This is where he's going.
Yeah.
I made the trip down there to see him. I saw him one time, and then the next day he passed away.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is a trade-off. When people are looking, you look at the convenience, and if somebody's married, that their spouse is able to get there close by. So sometimes that is what happened. Like you said, the great places are usually full.
Right.
Everybody knows where the good care is.
Exactly.
Okay, so it is hard, and that's something that families struggle with, especially families who are working now. You're now retired, and so a business born out of necessity in your own life, and people with elderly parents are still working and still in the workforce, and it's hard to get around to different facilities to figure out what the best solution is, whether it's mom and dad, or like you said, dad has to move or mom has to move and the other one stays in the home, or are they moving together? And there's a lot of choices out there. So what you do is that you deal with seniors and or their families, and they come to you to look for housing solutions.
Correct.
Okay. So when somebody calls you for the first time, what can they expect? Do you meet with the family? What information do you need to move forward?
Well, I guide them through the process. Typically, I'll get a phone call and I will discuss with them the basic needs the wishes that the family has. First of all, I'll find out, where do they live, what location is it that it is that the individual is at now, and once we determine we're going to look for a facility, where do they want to go? We look at the medical needs of that individual. Some need much greater care than others, so that dictates what facilities I would recommend. And lastly, I'll need to get into their budget. Because what I do, there's no cost to
Your service.
There's no cost for my service whatsoever. I'm an advisor to them. I'm looking for the best place that meets the needs for them, that their family member can be live in comfort and in a safe and secure environment. But I'll get into, it'll be a general conversation initially.
Well, that's one thing you have to know. I mean, it all depends on what their resources are.
Exactly.
Because not always with assisted living. I mean, often you can find an assisted living for $4,000 a month, and then in some other town, the same resource is $7,000 a month, and you're getting the same thing. But like you said, where is family? Where is the support? What is the income, and how sustainable is the income? Is it income that's going to be always with them, or is this a savings account they're pulling out of to be there? And when so that is, and I deal with that too. And when you ask people questions that are very personal, you hate to ask them, but the fact is you have to know.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm very comfortable with that as well. As mentioned, I'm recently retired from a long business career, over 3 decades, and that was in the banking world, specifically mortgage banking. And you're delving into every aspect of an individual and family's financial life when you're in mortgages. So I'm very comfortable in extracting that information. And in the case of a family who's looking to place a parent or a family member, typically they are open to whatever benefits may be available to them as well. And they understand that the criteria is different for varying items that may be available to them, benefits, and the more information I have, and I make it clear, we need to be concise, need to be fully honest with this. If there are benefits that are to be found, and particularly when they get to the point where if someone has to end up in a nursing home and they have to end up with payment coming through Medicaid, there's penalties that are incurred if something in the financials are found after the application is made. And there's ways to get around it. There's ways to disclose that. There's ways to move that to a spouse or to preserve it for the family later within the guides and the regulations that are there.
That's right.
So there's ways to do that.
Yeah. So actually, you kind of are paid then by the facility as a finder's fee, basically.
Exactly.
For you work with the family, and then wherever they end up. I mean, and I'm sure that you have scoped out the whole immediate area and know exactly what's out there, what a good match would be.
Exactly.
Okay, so when you meet with the family actually, or do you do this by phone?
Well, generally the initial conversation is by phone, but it's always best to meet with them, and usually I will.
Okay.
And they want to meet too, if they decide this is something they want to do and go forward, because I want to meet the individual, meet the family, really delve into what it is their goals and objectives are. And each family member may have a different idea of what's going to happen and what's going to go on.
I think that's probably more common than not.
Oh, it's extremely common, right. And they all have good intentions,
Sure.
but everybody has a different way of getting to the same end. So I like to meet with family and discuss all those details. But yes, I'm out and about even before I have a client or someone that's going to need my service. I'm out traveling and visiting the various facilities. In the state of Michigan, I believe just licensed assisted living facilities, there's over 4,500, and that doesn't include all of them. There's many that aren't licensed.
Oh, and adult foster care, and I mean, you name
Right.
it. I mean,
there's independent living facilities
Yes.
which don't need to be licensed, and I do deal with adult foster care homes, and the public probably is not aware of that until they need it. There's a lot of them that are just not very good,
no, that's right.
and it's important to have
I mean,
personal-
thousands of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Because that's simply a home in a residential neighborhood. It's probably in your neighborhood. There might be 1 or 2 there,
Yeah.
which is really an outstanding situation for the right person and with the right AFC.
Exactly. I think it's a great environment for seniors. You have 4, 5, 6 residents, depending on the size of the
Exactly.
home. You have somebody who stays with them all the time, and that would depend on who owns it and who's managing it.
Right.
So it can be wonderful, as provided that, say, if you have an Alzheimer's patient there who takes part in setting the table, and there's some structure there and so it could be a wonderful option. But then you get somebody who's, you're looking at, you could look at abuse or exploitation or any number of things. So that's just one situation where, because it's so small, because there's so limited outside come and go, that that would be something that you'd have to really, really be sure
Yeah,
of.
you have to really watch carefully,
Yeah.
and it's like anything, there's good and there's bad, and there's probably more bad ones in that arena, but there are
That's
some
true.
very, very tight-knit, outstanding homes that the owner of that home, maybe they started it because their mother, father, brother, sister was
right.
ill, and now the whole family's involved, and they're there, and as you mentioned, those are typically 2 to 6 residents in a particular home, in a neighborhood, and then when the elder person moves into that home, that becomes their new home and their new family.
Right.
And it's really a great environment for someone that, if that fits their lifestyle, it's great.
Yeah, and even if you're just looking at somebody who's frail, looking at cognitive impairment, it is really, in a lot of the homes, they focus on one particular group, so they all share
Yes,
the same
same,
problems.
Exactly.
So, if they're all just frail, or they all have Alzheimer's, and then often they have training, and hopefully staff training, so that you can deal with that whatever that affliction is.
Right.
And so that can be a really good thing if they're in an atmosphere where there are trained people who know how to handle their disease.
Yeah.
Okay, so typically then you work with the whole family. Now, do you normally get called by adult children, or seniors, or a combination of that?
It's typically the adult children, or for me, the healthcare professional, because a lot of the people that I deal with are coming right from the hospital. Something happens, it lands them in the hospital.
They can't live alone anymore.
And they can't go home. And that happens more often than you would think. So the caseworkers and the discharge managers at the hospitals and the rehab facilities are wonderful people, and they're very, very busy. And they do what they can when that individual is in their care. But when it comes time to release them back, they don't have the expertise, nor the time, or the inclination to visit and understand what is out there for the living arrangements for these people that they're releasing. So they rely on me or services like mine to find the individual they are.
The solution to the
a
problem.
solution to the problem, right? And it makes them they're glad to do that, because many times they just they have to tell the family, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do, but your dad has to leave tomorrow at noon, and
Yeah, you're on your own.
you're on your own. So
It's a scary thing when you're a family. It's like, okay, so what now? Do we take dad home? What do we do?
Exactly.
It's a loss. You're just in a very unfamiliar territory and in a crisis situation.
right. So it would be unusual for the individual themselves to give me a call. Usually a family member or a healthcare worker.
I figured that.
So yeah, or even a lot of times, the way families are today, they're really spread out around the country.
Yes.
And
You have 5 siblings. 3 of them live out of state. 1 lives up north, and you have 1 who's in the immediate area.
Right. So they need that assistance.
Yeah,
There you go.
absolutely. Okay, so generally speaking, what are we looking at as far as time goes? Somebody calls you, and here they are in their crisis situation. How quickly are you able to step in and try to help them figure it out?
Well, sometimes it has to go real quick. Generally, the more time you have, of course, the better.
Yes.
And it depends what community. Now, here in Westland, because I'm familiar with the area and the community, things can go quite quickly, because I know who has vacancies, who's accepting patients, what type of resident that particular facility will accept. Many times, because I'm not just limited to this area, it may take a little bit longer, because before I will recommend a facility to someone, I want to tour it myself.
Right.
I want to talk to the staff. I want to talk to the directors, see what kind of violations they may have with the state.
The survey, yeah.
In those things, because if I'm going to recommend or suggest a home, the first test that must pass is, would I put my mom or dad there, my brother or sister there?
Right.
So if I have the luxury of doing that, the luxury of time of doing that, many times, particularly if they want to go into an AFC, I may have to visit 20 of them before I'll find one or two good ones.
That's right.
So, but it's all different time frames. Some that it has to happen immediately, others they're being proactive.
Well, and the nice thing is that when this is your career, once you visit, the outstanding ones always stick in your mind.
Exactly.
Yes, I do this. Make a notation. This is a star.
Exactly.
You know, so that's a great thing. Right. So the purpose actually is to A, step in a crisis situation, B, to solve the problem, but C is as that an advocate for that senior, because what you're looking at is the best possible solution to the problem. And like you said, you know, when you're forced to make a quick situation, in retrospect, it's not the best, but as you continue to build your foundation of knowledge regarding what the options are out there, you know, the better off the families are that you serve. So
Absolutely.
That's a great thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you're looking at a senior, you're thinking, you know, what is the best situation here? What are you looking at as far as socialization, or, you know, what is your objective? Like, is the doctor close by? Is the family close by? I know that you know, the family and what they can bring to the conversation helps you to decide what the priorities are.
Right.
But when you're looking at pairing somebody with a best place, you know, what is your mindset as far as if you know what you try to accomplish?
Well, the socialization part is very important. So number one is, as we mentioned early on, the location is extremely important. And not necessarily where they live now, but who are the people that are going to be visiting them, or how can we make it convenient for them where they can stop by on their way to or from work, or family members or friends that we can make it convenient and easy for them to visit, because we know the individuals that receive frequent visits from family and friends get the best care.
That's right.
Because the staff takes mental note of that, and they, even though they do the best that they can, usually there's that thing in the back of their mind that they know if a family's coming around regularly, they want to make sure that they're taking care of that individual. So that's very important. And when we're looking at the smaller AFCs, the adult foster care homes, also we can look at if there's an ethnic group that maybe they are comfortable with based on their background. Is there a religious tendency or affiliation that they want to be a part of? And because those are 5 or 6 people generally, you can find them something that they're very comfortable moving into, that they're familiar with. And that, as we know with dementia, being familiar with surroundings and people and avoiding new things.
Yeah, change is very difficult.
Can help very much, right?
Yes.
So yeah, we look at all that.
Oh, great. So how long have you been doing this now?
Well, really about 6 years that I've been thinking about this and looking at places and doing it. It's fairly new this year, since I retired earlier this year. Yeah. I'm doing this now, but it's not really a job now. I've had a long, successful career. This is my forever job, I guess, or the next chapter in my life, my give back period, something I can do till I start looking for a home to go to, right? When my kids have to place me somewhere. Because
well, then you'll know exactly where you want to go. I want to go there.
If I can remember at that time, right?
That's right.
But it's something that is personally very rewarding. What I went through with my family, and also I dealt with this with my mother, and to some degree with my sister, who was a couple years older than me, who had passed away within a 2-year period. I lost my sister, mother, and father. So I learned a whole bunch.
Sure.
So I learned a lot there, and my daughter is an OT, an occupational therapist, who works for a PACE program in the Jackson area, and she's been very influential in my thinking and in what I do, and I see how much she loves what she does, the rewards that she receives personally and professionally, and it's something I can carry on for, forever now.
Sure, and the thing about it is the reward is when you're successful at what you do, it is a significant game changer for your client.
Absolutely.
And the family. And, you feel so bad when you see people in a situation that ends up not being good for them. And then, your involvement makes the difference on what path that they end up taking in the rest of that person's life, whether it's a good outcome or not so good.
Yeah, and it's great responsibility
It
that
is
I
a
take
great
very
responsibility,
seriously.
yeah.
And as I mentioned, this is not something I'm necessarily doing as a business,
Right.
but as a way of life, and just something I can do now for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
And, I take it very seriously.
Yeah, and you hate to say it's a hobby, but once you start doing for other people and seeing what great outcome, that reward in itself
Right.
is like amazing.
Right.
So I think it's great what you do, and I think I don't know if business is taking off, but I can tell you this: the service is much needed out there.
It's needed. It's a growing field. You're going to see other people begin to do this because it is so needed, and I welcome that, because the more transparent and the greater the spotlight we can put on the whole industry,
Yeah.
maybe some of these ones that aren't so good will clean up their act a little bit.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
All right, so we will show your information. So those people who are watching, this is a number that you want to keep, because guess what? If you don't need it now, and this is why I love to do shows, you're going to say, I watched this 2 years ago. Oh, what's that guy's name? I got
Right.
to call Barb.
Exactly.
Yeah, so anyway, I thank you for what you're doing, and it's nice to see that people decide to do a business or a second career based on something other, something that comes from them and their life experience and understanding the need out there and trying to do something great for families, because that crisis situation is probably one of the lowest points in the family's what are we going to do? And
question.
so it's great to have you out there, and I'm glad that we're able to talk about what service you provide, and how good you are at doing that. So thank you so much for being here and sharing the information with our viewing audience.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. I appreciate it, the opportunity to be here. I guess to explain very briefly what I do for the public, it's similar to a Place for Mom, but I think it's much more personal and local. And what a Place for Mom does is really they're a marketing firm that collects
Yes.
names and
Yep.
distributes that out to 10, 12, 15 facilities. And then those facilities are calling the patient or the family, trying to
Get them to
arrange a
move there.
sale, right, to fill a bed.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of aggravation for the family at a time when they just don't need it, when
Right.
that takes place. So
Absolutely.
I eliminate all of that aggravation and stress, and I work with them one-on-one, again, at no cost to them, to answer their questions and help them find a place for their family member. And even if I can't help them, I can direct them to services such as yours at the Senior Center, where there's a lot of services and resources that are available. The MAP program, which is the Medicare and Medicaid Assistance Program. You have
We
counselors.
just had Betty here.
Okay,
Yeah,
they're
to show
wonderful
ya.
people.
Yeah.
There's the VA aid and attendance that some of these individuals may be eligible for. The Michigan MI Choice Waiver Program, which allows them to get some revenue and some money to help take care of home care. So I know all of the professionals in all of these different areas, and I'm not an expert in any of them.
No, but knowing where to go for the information is the key.
Exactly. So if they just have a general question, they're not looking to place mom and dad at this point, please feel free to give me a call, and I will direct them to those proper agencies and those resources that are out there that can help the family.
Right.
Glad to
Well,
do it.
Special. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barb.
All right. And thank you, friends in the viewing audience, for being with us today.